Good morning. I'm Shannon Lake, Principal Consultant at Brandon LLC, and I'm your moderator for the first half of today's conversation. We have four panels today, one on planning, one on project development, one on funding, and one on placemaking. But we're going to jump right in this morning. We are pleased to have Anasa Troutman, the CEO of the Big We, here to share the powerful story of how historic Clayborn Temple is being rebuilt and reimagined for the next generation. Anasa?
Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much, Shondell, to you, the Downtown Memphis Commission, for having us, and thank you to James and his team for putting all this together. Thanks for all of y'all being here. I could talk for like 2 hours, and we're trying to do this in 10 minutes, but I do want to start by giving you a little bit of background on our organization and what we are doing, so that as you are giving comments, suggestions, and advice, you are doing that within a framework that is going to actually get us to our ultimate goal. So my name is Anasa Troutman. I'm the founder and CEO of the Big We. The Big We is a social enterprise, a nonprofit here in downtown Memphis, Tennessee, my favorite city in the whole wide world. I moved to Memphis almost 9 years ago with the intention of being here for 6 months to produce and co-write musical about the sanitation worker strike. And I fell in love with the city and its people and its stories. And I decided I never wanted to ever leave. And so far I haven't, which is a lot for me because I like to leave. The Big We really is focused on building infrastructure and resource for the creative economy. And we do that because we believe that Memphis, all of the stories of Memphis have taught us that its stories are the ones that are going to get us into the future. So we feel like Memphis has big lessons to teach us and the rest of the world about how we live, how everybody can have access to safety, joy, love, and abundance. What we talk about it about building beloved community, and we think that Memphis is a place to show the world to do that. And because our number one challenge in Memphis is economics. We know that the poverty here impacts crime, it impacts education, it impacts access to all kinds of things. And we believe at the Big We that our level that we can pull to be able to transform the economy here in Memphis is by building the creative economy. This is the most creative, innovative city that I've ever seen in my life. And there are so many artists and stories and spaces that have not been activated, have not been programmed, have not been leveraged for us to be able to build a more equitable and sustainable economy here in the city. So we have built a body of work that is directed directly towards that. We do three things at the Big We. One, we do culture-based land development. We own multiple properties across downtown and South Memphis, including the birth home of Aretha Franklin, and of course, our beloved historic Clayborn Temple. We have a very robust cultural entrepreneur program where we have an accelerator that supports the growth and sustainability of new businesses, including giving them access to loans that they do not have to pay back until they are in Black in their company. And we do a lot. Our third thing is a lot of placemaking and storytelling so that we can help to be able to give birth to a new narrative about Memphis and who we are and what's possible for us collectively. Yes. Yes. Thank you. Thanks. You get it. Yeah. So we just obviously in April suffered great tragedy with the loss of Clayborn and the experience of two other fires in our ecosystem. But we were able to rebound very quickly because we have great relationships with our neighbors, with our funders, with our community here. And we have made incredible strides over the past 6 months to be able to not just rebound, but actually to reimagine even better than we were before. We are not only in planning mode for Clayborn, but we also have been pretty aggressive in acquisition mode in terms of expanding our footprint. We just closed on the office building next to Clayborn on Friday. So we now are the owners of the AMEC building, another historic building in downtown South Memphis, where all the strike closed door meetings happen with King and the labor unions. So we are now stewards of that space. Also, we'll be telling that story in tandem with the historic Clayborn Temple story. And we have our eyes on one other piece that we're going to hopefully close on before the year. I'll tell you about that later, but not today. We have secured funding for all of the pre-development for Clayborn. So just after the fire, we had enough construction money in our accounts to be able to do all the stabilization. So we immediately, our team was on the scene, like within hours of the fire, even starting before the fire was out, all our team was on the scene. Within 2 weeks, we were able to stabilize the building. We have in the last October, we removed the organ from the building. So there are multiple parts of the building that are still safe, sound, ready to be reused. There's lots of elements in the building that were in the fire but that survived. So the bell tower, the annex, multiple fixtures and other things that are original to the building are ready to be salvaged. And so we have a lot to build on. We're not starting from scratch. We have enough to be able to have a proper preservation project and historic restoration. We also have the support of the National Park Service, who has said that they will honor I know, right? They will honor our applications for tax credits, for historic tax credits. And so like we at this point pretty much have everything going for us. I mean, besides arson, we have everything going for us, right? And so we have secured that funding for pre-development. So we'll be spending the next probably 6 months thinking about salvage and cleanup and initial drawings and all that. And then we are building a capital campaign. We've secured half the capital campaign committee. Now our goal is to close that campaign before February. We are still actively looking for new capital campaign members. So if anybody's interested, talk to someone on our team before I leave today. And then we'll launch our capital campaign, our silent phase in April. We're planning a 2-day funder event. We'll have probably 50 funders from around the country, foundations, private philanthropy, family offices, and impact investors will be coming to Memphis for a 2-day event in April. And that's where we will launch our silent phase of our campaign. We will be launching a $75 million campaign that will not only secure our campus for Clayborn, but rebuild the building and give us a few years of programming and give us a $10 million building endowment so that we can keep the building safe, secure, and restored for the rest of its life. And we're very excited about all that. I think I'm gonna stop there. 7 minutes ago, me, because I really am eager. I'm actually really excited about this because I was telling somebody out front, like 9 years ago, I was not a developer, I was not a preservationist, I was just I was an artist and a storyteller. And this city has turned me into something so much more. And I always love to hear from experts and people who have interesting ideas. And so I'm really excited to be able to add to my own knowledge and to help us think about how to do this the right way. So thank y'all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anasa, for setting the stage for why we're here today. I would like to begin with our first panel and do brief bios, and then have our panelists also give their own brief introductions of themselves. So first up, I'm going to start with Shondell and Shondell Ryan. Shondell became the president and CEO of the Downtown Memphis Commission in January of 2024, where she's the first African American female to serve in this role. She's responsible for creating strategies and policies designed to support the growth of downtown Memphis through investments in development, infrastructure, vibrancy, and activation. Ryan directs the implementation of a variety of programs and tools to foster development and investment and to make downtown active, walkable, clean, safe, and inclusive and interesting. Thank you and welcome, Shondell. Next up
Thank you.
is, you're welcome. Next up is Will Randolph. Will is a passionate designer and motivated by socially conscious, dynamic urban development. He's skilled at reimagining common building materials and construction practices and shedding new light on their applications through modern detailing and execution. Will spent nearly a decade at the Memphis firm Archimania, where he gained invaluable knowledge and experience on a wide range of project types at varying scales and budgets. His work there included such projects as Frontline Townhomes, Redeemer Presbyterian Church, and various infill projects at the Crosstown Concourse. Thank you and welcome, Will. Next up, we have John Halford. John Halford, AIA, has lots of credits. AIA, NCRARB, Lead AP, and is a Memphis architect, developer, and principal consultant at the Design PLLC. And he leads the multidisciplinary teams delivering projects including historic, adaptive reuse hospitality, restaurant, retail, office, and residential. As both architect and developer, his role ranges from concept and planning through pro formas, financial analysis, and delivery. His team works in downtowns across the US and with a focus on neighborhood revitalization and the repositioning of existing historic buildings. Welcome, John. We also have our co-moderator, Paul Morris. Paul Morris is a lawyer, small business owner, and community leader. Paul helped lead downtown Memphis development for a decade from 2005 through 2015 as a board member, chair, and then president of the Downtown Memphis Commission. Paul served as the project manager for the Main to Main multimodal connector project and was interim manager for the Beale Street Entertainment District. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you.
And we'll actually go ahead and start with you, Paul, if you'd like to do a brief introduction of yourself.
Absolutely. But first, I'm going to cede a little bit of my time to Anas.
Yeah, I just wonder if it would be helpful for you all to hear where we are on the building use. Would that be helpful?
Sure.
Okay. So we have done quite a bit of work in the reimagining space to think about what we're going to use the building for. One of the things that we're really aware of is that while we are squarely in 38126 down South Memphis, we are the southern gateway into downtown, and that we get a lot of traffic from the Grizzlies games and other folks who are coming in and out of downtown. And so we've thought a lot about our physical location in relationship to our into the way that we will do our work. And so we've come up with 3 uses for the building that I think are important for y'all to hear. The first is obviously we need to have some kind of museum attraction, but because we have such a beautiful contribution to museum space in the NCRM, we don't need to replicate that work. We don't need to do a traditional static museum. So we are working with the team that built the immersive Star Wars Museum for Disney to think about what it looks like to build an immersive attraction in Clayborn Temple so that people are getting an experience of the strike. So instead of coming in and reading panels and seeing pictures, you would come in and I would say, oh, I'm so happy to see you, Paul. Today your name is T.O. Jones. Come into the meeting and you'll walk into a union meeting, you'll go through an actual experience. So you not only learn the story, but you learn the lessons of the strike. You can go home to your neighborhood and use those lessons there. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that we will be having a 500-seat venue in the sanctuary called the Sanctuary at Historic Clayborn Temple. We think that there is no other venue of that size in downtown. Obviously, the building will be the most beautiful theater in all of Memphis, but also will be significant in terms of history and location and size. It will be a modular theater, so we can do anywhere from movie nights to banquets to community meetings to really anything, right? We can use the space any kind of way that we want to. There will be a stage, there will be light, sounds, all the things, right? You know, music industry background, so it has to sound good. So I'll be real mad every night. And then finally, we will be building a second, in addition to the back of the church. It is the recreation of it used to be called it was a gym, I think, at one point, and it was destroyed and removed from the building. We're gonna put that back, and we'll be building what we're calling the Robert R. Church Center for Cultural and Economic Innovation. So that will be our kind of think and do tank, if you will, where we build all of our creative economy solutions, where we do incubate all of our new businesses, where we do our community community work and meetings and all that stuff will happen in the back of the church in the innovation center. Is that helpful?
Yeah.
Yes, sweet. Okay, great.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
So my name's Paul, and I used to run DMC, and proud to be back here. It's fun. It was the Center City Commission when I started working here as a board member in 2005, and started working here on staff as president in 10. And some of the things we did that are, I think, relevant today, where we restored a lot of historic buildings. I mean, Chisca Hotel was blighted, boarded up, chain link fence around it, kind of like the chain link fence around, the temple today. And it had been abandoned for many years by a church. And we worked, and it was really hard and worked really, it was difficult to structure transaction to get the title from the church and into the hands of folks that could redevelop it. And so we did that building, and then the brewery, the downtown brewery, that was something that we were able to take a blighted building that had been abandoned for many years and turn it around. And as I've heard Chandel say many times, and I completely agree, I mean, one of the great things about downtown Memphis is we have preserved so much of our history and our historic building stock. A lot of downtowns, Charlotte is an example of a great downtown. I love Charlotte, but it feels on the plus side, it feels so new and it's been a while since I've been there, but that's how their uptown felt to me. But it didn't feel like it had the same character or connection, emotional connection that downtown Memphis has. And I was reconnected with that last night in preparation for today. I went to the temple and spent about an hour and a half, 2 hours just being there and walking around the building and listening to the police thing beep at me but seeing the barbed wire around it and seeing the rubble and it was, it's sad. I mean, even with someone who doesn't have any personal connection to the events of the civil rights era or that temple, and I don't have any personal connections, it's still, there's a gravity of feeling there. And it's and of course the I Am a Man Plaza and reading all those panels was really interesting. And then from there, I drove though to the First United Methodist Church because I was attending First United Methodist Church. I wasn't a member, but I went most Sundays when they had their fire. There was a big fire at church not too far from here. It started at First United Methodist Church and spread to Lincoln American Tower, which was under development at the time. We were developing that project, another historic building, and it burned, and the developers had to start over. So there's a lot of examples, I think, for back in my day, for things that y'all are trying to do now. And I mean, First United Methodist Church looks good. I mean, it took them a long time though. That building burned in 2006, and it was not reopened until 2018. It wasn't finished in 2018, but they did get it done. I haven't been in connection with that congregation lately. I'm curious to know how they're doing. They have members, because some people would say, and my role I think here is to provocatively ask some questions. So don't assume that I'm expressing opinions about my questions, but questions that I'm going to ask as I go as a co-moderator is, well, I mean, and I asked First Methodist at the time, like, do we need another church building downtown? Because we don't have enough church members. We got about a church for every church member downtown at the time. And then of course we have a lot of museums and we have a lot of event spaces. And I hear you say, we don't necessarily have that sweet spot, and I don't challenge that. But one of the things I'm really thinking about, and I was thinking about yesterday, what does the neighborhood need? What are the neighbors? So I'll stop there with my introduction. One other connection that I have to the building, which is very ancillary, is I'm the chair of Neighborhood Preservation Inc., which I'm sure you're familiar with.
Yes.
We have now merged our operations with the Works CDC. I know you know Rashawn.
Of course.
But I'm the chair of that board and have been for a long time, since George Cates told me to do that before he passed away. And Neighborhood Preservation Inc. is, and you would know this better, but we took the title to that building from AME, structured that transaction to get the temple from AME Church, and held by a subsidiary of NPI. And my understanding of NPI, that entity, the members of that entity have transferred to your organization. So NPI as an organization is no longer involved, but we were there in a facilitating role.
Sure.
That's mine. Who's up next, Shannon?
Thank you, Paul. Up next is John Halford.
Well, hello, and thank you, Shannon, for the introduction. I'll try not to be repetitive on that, but I am an architect and developer. My group is Connect Design and Development. We do a variety of work, which Shannon, you mentioned. Most applicable to this conversation is the historic adaptive reuse work that we do. We work predominantly in downtown markets across the United States, working on projects ranging from relatively small, maybe 10,000 square foot plus historic projects to large over 1 million square foot historic projects. So we work on a wide range of historic properties. Locally, and a few that we're excited about is that in the Edge District, we're working on the old Heartbreak Hotel just nearby, where they have done a great job restoring the Motor Museum there in the Edge. We were also in the early stages of the old, I think is the Porter Leith or the Leith Orphanage Asylum is what it was historically known as in North Memphis, that we're working on plans for that right now. From the development side, we do a lot of adaptive reuse work, both historical and not necessarily historical. And I think one of the things that I'll emphasize in my piece today is that one of the best methods of preservation is really use, which I think using the building and making sure that you've got regular, daily use and very practical use, which I think is something that you were kind of hitting on as well. So yeah, that's my intro.
Thank you. And up next, we have Will Randolph.
All right, well, thanks so much for having me here today. It's really a pleasure and honor to be sitting here with you and talking about this really, really exciting and impactful project for our city. I work with an architectural firm called HUBA, which comes from the Office of Basic Architecture. And I think I'm probably here today because our firm, one of our missions is we actively strive and tailor our design services to make the process of design and development accessible to all members of our community. We really believe that architecture is something that shouldn't be so precious and so confined to few members of society. And in addition, we really believe and practice every day to hopefully prove that contemporary and historic or traditional architecture can not only sit side by side and be compatible, but that they can elevate each other. And that, over the past 100 years of architecture and design, our profession has somewhat moved away from the basics of keeping water out of our buildings, longevity. And so I think that when we're thinking about a project like this, that hopefully will be around for centuries to come, that's a really critical factor. So excited to continue the conversation, and thanks for having me.
Thank you, Will. Up next, we have Shondell Ryan.
Good morning, everyone. I'm happy to be here as well. And I guess I'll just say from the DMC perspective is that we are really working diligently to bring more buildings back to their full glory. We have a set of tools to help developers, architects, and people who are just interested in downtown to do that work. And it's becoming increasingly difficult for that work. And we're really leaning into looking at other tools and ways for us to help in the environment that we've faced with. I'm really excited to have this conversation because there's so much history in our downtown, so much happened down here, things in the world. And to be able to talk about how we can embrace and celebrate that. And it's just special to me to be a part of this conversation. So I'm happy to be here. I'm almost 2 years into the work. So lots of wins so far, and just really a rewarding, place to work in. Really is to help see the work that a lot of people do on life. It's just amazing.
Thank you, Shondell. I'm going to pass it back over to Paul. We've got about 5 minutes or so before the next panel to get into some of the questions that you have for everyone.
This will be a lightning round, but Shanda, I kind of prefaced this, like, why do we want to preserve historic buildings and places where historic things happen? I mean, there's an argument, and I'll make the argument quickly. We need new stuff. Like we've got a lot of historic and museums and blighted buildings downtown. How important is it isn't it better maybe just to start building some new buildings and focus on that? Why do we try to save historic places and things?
Yeah, I think we need a mix. I think there is opportunity for new things, but when you have something as special as a building like this, you have to invest in bringing it back. And we have a number of really special buildings that our downtown has. And I think we have had a great philosophy as an organization on nurturing those buildings. I think we really have the use case for adaptive, like we really have the model for adaptive reuse in the country, really. So I think it's necessary for our story. So much impactful things happen here, and it's so cool to go back and look at photos of historical events, and I'm like, I know that building, I know that building, and I know that building. So I think it takes a mix.
Well, Will, what jumps out at you as components of a good planning process, restarting from scratch? I mean, there's been a lot of work, I know, on this temple, but looking at it yesterday, you're kind of starting from scratch. You're starting from rubble and a chain link barbed wire fence. What is most important to do in the planning process at this stage?
Well, I think, it's hard not to first consider the use of this building, which I really appreciate you, going through that a bit. But, coming into this conversation, one of the things that I thought a lot about was, is this building a shrine to the past frozen in time, purely simply a museum? Or is it a living, breathing incubator for equality, community, and joy? And I don't know exactly what that function is, but I actually had a little quote from Jane Jacobs from The Life and Death of Great American Cities, which was, "We expect too much of new buildings and too little of ourselves." And so, I think the most important thing is how can this building, do a great job of facilitating whatever communal civic functions can happen inside it.
Yeah. John, you've done so many cool things at the edge, and it makes me think, and I know they've thought about these things, but what are some things they could do now to activate the space, or in the short term anyway, to activate and create some attention to that space?
Well, I mean, they're doing it now. I think engaging people in the planning process is a tool that we use to activate the buildings. I think going back to your previous question as well, the process of preserving, the building now, for example, you're describing, accurately, there's a lot of rubble, there's, chain link fence. Importantly, when there's destruction like this, there's a whole lot of, water intrusion, things that are exposed to the elements that had not been previously exposed to the elements. And so, acting quickly to engage people in the planning process, I would not recommend, let's turn it into, there are projects where you could, bring food trucks and, start hanging out and using it. We really need to, bring in the experts and think how we can preserve the building and act quickly to do that. So I think that's kind of the, bringing the community around. There's plenty of space around the building that I do think that, short-term activation could be impactful. Again, insofar as that's bringing people towards that goal of, preserving what's there and taking the next steps in projects.
With a minute left, Shandell, putting you on the spot. Can Memphis downtown support another museum, another event space? Do we have the demand for that? Are the other museums struggling, or are they busting at the seams with customers?
I think it's in the macro environment is leading into what we have going on downtown. I absolutely think that another museum would help because it would connect a whole story, and to pull them all together and let them feed off of each other in a special way would be dynamic for our downtown Memphis, to be able to walk the different sites and the steps. And I just want to celebrate Anasa and her team for what they've done, because we're talking about what can be done. I just want to celebrate the right steps that they've made to get us to this point to even be having this conversation. I just remember her talking about departing to serve, and we've got to remember that was our mindset as a city at one point. And but how can you not lean into that and connect those dots?
Right. Well, I think it's our time, and I really appreciate the thoughts here, especially I think bringing in some. I think you referenced this. I mean, you've been living this and thinking about this over the last 9 years, and thank you for coming to Memphis. And
course.
I think we're all Memphians and we love Memphis here, and you're kind of new to our town in that sense, but you were truly a Memphian to tackle this big project, and we really, really appreciate you doing that. And that's what makes Memphis great, is people like you, Memphians like you, that do that.
I wish we had more time if y'all are all welcome. So if you have more to say, you want to talk more, you have ideas in the middle of the night, like just keep talking.
Great,
Yeah, thank y'all so much.
great.
Thank you.
Shannon?
Yes, thank you so much, panel one, for a great conversation around planning. I do wish we had more time, but we are moving on to our next topic, which is project development. Anasa, did you have any connection points that you'd like to make before we dig into the bios for our next panel?
Yeah, I think Shondell is reminding me of some conversations that she and I have had that I think are important for this part of the conversation. And that is, when we set out to restore Clayborn Temple, even 8 years ago, when we bought it in 2019, I always knew that restoring the building without thinking about the restoration of the whole neighborhood was not going to be enough. And so we have developed a kind of approach to development called restorative development that has pillars and things that I won't go into. But we also have thought about, this idea that our downtown in South Memphis has no fewer than 30 historic spaces, most of which have not been restored, not been activated, not been programmed, and not been networked. And so we think of Clayborn not just as a singular entity, but as an anchor for a much bigger possibilities for development that has housing, that has, brick and mortar business, that has other infill projects. And I would love for the planning or the project development team here to be, y'all can sit down, to be thinking about that bigger conversation as well as Clayborn, because for us, if we just rebuild Clayborn and we open up and we're successful, but don't do anything else, I would feel like we failed. Hey, y'all. Daniel, may I make a request?
Yes.
I would love for us to minimize the introduction part so that we can really get into the conversation, because I know these folks, they know each other in their bio, so I would to just do either you read them or they introduce themselves, but I would
That was
love
the
to.
plan. We've been adapting in the background while y'all are going.
I love it.
So thank you so much. Welcome. I know I cannot see the room as well as you can. So is everybody settled?
Oh yeah, we're ready.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, panel two. We are getting into project development. And on today's panel, I will ask you all to do your self-introductions rather than read your bios for you. In the room, we have Allison Hooks, Bo Yarbrough, Jimmy Tucker, and co-moderator Ramon Morrison. Allison, if you could start us off with your intro, please.
Well, I'm Allison Hooks. I work for All World Project Management. I am a 7th generation Memphian. We have the area downtown was very pivotal for my family on both sides. They had businesses there. And I've been part of the Clayborn Temple Project, historic Clayborn Temple Project since 2020. And this has been an awesome opportunity as well as a project. I simply love Amasa and the amount of, the way that she tells the story. But just a year off of that, just a little bit, my background is architecture as well as city and regional planning. Been in this field for a little under 30 years, and I've been involved in historic projects from New Orleans as well as aviation projects. And so, and then moved here back to Memphis and been involved in the project management side. So.
I also love you too.
Thank you, Allison. Bo.
Hey, good morning. I'm Bo Yarbrough, the operations manager for the Central Division of Yates Construction. I'm a native Memphian, born at the Baptist Hospital downtown in 1973. And I wish it was still here, but just for reference. But been in the city for a long time now, since '88. Moved around the South a lot as a kid. My dad was in sales, and I got to see Jackson, Mississippi, and Little Rock, Arkansas, and out to Tulsa. My mother's from New York, and so would visit there every year and got to experience the breadth and the culture of that city as well as others around the world. Went to the University of Mississippi, got an undergraduate and master's degree in accounting. Was an economic and accounting advisor for the Peace Corps in Western Samoa for a short time. Did some consulting in Austin, and then came back here in 1998 to start my own construction company that later joined forces with another firm that I was vice president general manager of for 9 years prior to joining Yates about 2 years ago. And so we're part of the Yates family of companies based out of Philadelphia, Mississippi, very involved in large scale construction projects around the country. But as far as the Memphis community is concerned, I mean, I remember when I met Jimmy right after the recession of '08, '09-ish kind of area, and that back when our own family company was operating on its own, and we were looking at a redevelopment opportunity on South Main. And it was still one of those times where the banks didn't want to touch any property downtown. It was just, and it was, we had a phenomenal property, great bones, and just nobody wanted to finance it, no matter how much equity we had in it. And it was eye-opening for me, because as a native Memphian and someone who's seen so much, I guess, in the course of 53 years, and looking back at the history that came before me, what a great soul the city has. And I mean, that's just the one thing that as a person born and growing up in this area, if I can say what Memphis has soul. It's not always expressed, it's not always seen and understood, and that's part of us to tell that story.
That's right.
And so I look forward to whatever contribution I can make from the experiences I've had to help us do that and tell that story and to show the soul that we have.
Thank you so much, Bo. Up next, Jimmy Tucker.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jimmy Tucker, Self Tucker Architects. I am a native Memphian. So historic Clayborn Temple has just been a building, a history that has had a profound influence on me as a Memphian. So because through the civil rights turbulence and the time before that, it's been a project that history has played a prominent role in the history of the city, as well as my own life and other people of mine that I'm connected with. And I've just been incredibly pleased to be a part of this project. We started around 2017, but even prior to that, our firm was involved in the stabilization of the building because it was sitting abandoned. Fortunately, water was coming into the building. It was being really devastated. But fortunately, it has been an incredible building, very well built. So we have had the opportunity to revitalize the building, put in a tremendous amount of work. And so we were very devastated on that Monday morning when we listened to the news, and it was just heartbroken what had occurred. But I will say that we are, I guess, really encouraged, inspired by NASA's efforts around revitalizing and rebuilding this project, because we do see that it's very achievable. All the information is available because of the process, Ramon, that we went through in terms of designing revitalization. We have plenty of documentation that will allow the building to come back. I will say, just certainly look forward to speaking more about that, but we also have had the opportunity to work on the Civil Rights Museum, Universal Life Insurance Company, where our building is located, where our office is located. We actually own that building. Also, Stax Museum, which is another building, it got demolished, and it was able to bring it back. And so it's been a credible asset to the community. But looking forward to this conversation, looking forward to working with everyone that you assembled along with James. So just really excited to be here today.
Thank you so much, Jimmy. Ramon, if you could introduce yourself and then go ahead and dive into the questions for the panel.
Sure, and I'll be very, very quick, hopefully. I'm Ramon Morrison. I'm one of the founding partners of Meticulous Design Architecture. I'm not a Memphian, but like Anasa, there's something about Memphis. And I think Memphians are universal if you really stop and think about the overall impact of everything that happened in this community that impacted me, even up in Indianapolis, Jimmy, throughout the arc of my life. I mean, civil rights emanates from here. And so because we are designed, we hung out our shingle to really impact and uplift humanity wherever that occurs. And that's a global pursuit. Why not be here? This checks every why in my particular book and every why of our firm. And so very encouraged, very honored to even be at this table to have this conversation and just think about how we can reimagine and talk about how this can become not just a revitalization of this particular building and edifice, but to your point, how does it serve as that boulder in the water that ripples economically throughout the community around it? And so just encouraged about this conversation.
Thank you, Ramon. And feel free to go ahead and dive in with the Q&A.
Okay. Well, with that said, let's do it in reverse. Start where I left off, and that is how can this? We think we talked enough about the building and the phenomenal resilience that you and your team are exhibiting. The big we is exhibiting to bring this edifice back. What happens beyond this? We're talking about project development here, right? So what happens beyond this? How can this serve as that anchor? How can this be that economic engine, internally and externally? Just want to open up for anyone.
Well, I would say that and this is really something that ANASA's been focused on throughout the design and development of this project, of how it could impact and have a positive impact on people in the surrounding area and people that are in the surrounding community. So it's not a building that's being revitalized, and yet the people are not benefiting from that revitalization. So I'm looking forward to that, and I know ANASA will continue to make that a priority. And so whether it's physically and the impact it has, but also economically in terms of the people that are welcome to have a role in the project and being very intentional about making sure that we're strategic and looking at ways of making sure that people have that opportunity to be involved.
Allison, any thoughts?
So I'll say that when we first got started, our company first, Our World Project Management, got involved in historic Clayborn Temple. The direction that we were going in was very similar to what the reimagining of Clayborn Temple is today, due to the tragedy in April that occurred. Very much wanting to be able to create a space that is community oriented, can give back to the community and embrace people to come in. But I would like to say that through the process, the exercise that we have gone through since we were able to stabilize the structure, the direction has taken on something very unique to the city when we are able to, open up the doors to the community, being that, and something that Shandell mentioned is, or Paul Morris mentioned, is that we don't need another museum space that is somewhat stagnant, because I can tell you that I'll go and then I don't go back because I've had that experience. So the beauty in this is that it moves with the people as necessary to continuously engage the community. And I also like the component of the the think tank, if you will, that will be a huge component, which is very necessary for helping other Memphians and transplants in the city to realize that they have a grand amount of potential to develop Memphis in the way that they want to see it. And so it's exciting. It's very exciting to be a part of that.
You know, this morning when I was in preparation for this, again, I'm not Memphian, so I really had to come with it. I had to be certain that I can like double dutch. I didn't want to trip up when I got in this room. And I was doing my research, and Allison, I was really struck by one of the comments that you were quoted on. And you said essentially what you just said, that we're gonna do something different now, essentially. I'm gonna paraphrase that. And I was reading my Bible this morning, and I was in Genesis 50:20, and it talked about Joseph and how Joseph forgave his brothers, but he said what was meant for evil, God is intending for good. And I think that we're in the midst of that right now. It's the sense that I get because of everything that's moving. So go to that point again, and we're talking about project development. You're a sticks and bricks guy.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of what I was about to dig into.
Yeah,
There are a ton of idea people in here, and I love that.
Yeah.
What we do is build stuff.
Yep.
And it's brick and mortar, it's boots on the ground. And so to me, it's what can I contribute to help this project be most effective as you want to build it and do it the best way you can. And three things came to mind, for me in looking at all the projects we've ever done, and then thinking about specifically what could make this a successful project. And number one is assembling the right team. And it's people that have buy-in. It's not just about a dollar. It's not just about a check box on a resume or saying we did it. It's that they really do care about this. And that makes a ton of difference. It's the way I build a team. I don't want people that on my team that are just there to collect a paycheck. I want people that are passionate about what they do. They want to be a subject matter expert at what they do and to help and reach in and work with other people. And I think that's the key to building the right team here. It's those that really, truly care about the project. Number two is understanding what your money is going to look like. And I think a target value design approach is going to be something you need to say, this is what we got to spend, and everybody let's work together to figure out the maximum design we can get for these dollars. And then beyond that, making it a CPD or collaborative project development type of thing that really everybody gets in and has skin in the game and is working toward the same goal.
I don't want to skip, you just rattled off with an acronym there, break that down, CDPI.
Yeah, I mean, collaborative project development is exactly what it sounds like. It is people with skin in the game. I mean, you hear IPD, integrated project development, and I think, I first heard CPD when Covelis introduced it and wants to use that on the project for Regional 1. And as I started thinking about that, I said that is really it. And for this project, to me, there are folks on our side of the fence that don't love that, not necessarily with Yates, but with others, and some that do. And to me, you need to find the folks on the CMGC side that, or CMAR, or whatever you want to, the arrangement you want to make, that want to be involved in that kind of a project. So
Yeah, the team starts early too, right?
It does.
yeah,
It
get
does.
everybody at the table as early as you can, but I can't tell you how many times we get brought to the table and the ideas are great, but the execution dollars aren't there.
Yeah.
And so let folks like us that care help you through that process and be part of that.
Front-end planning is very essential in this project, and I will say that we did implement a lot of that in the very beginning, but it has come a long way at this point. We do have a wonderful team on the construction side that is very bought into the process. And I know all of us were oohing and ahhing over all of the elements that we found within the building as they were going through the exterior modification. And I was just sharing with, before the meeting started, how we found various elements within the building where they had cured the brick and the wood. And unfortunately, within this situation with the arson, I'm not so sure that survived as a result, but there were, a lot of the people who worked on the building were very dedicated. And that was something that, you know, on a lot of different projects, you don't see because I'm working on a large scale project at the airport and the same care and interest is not the same. And so with this, because it is such a jewel in downtown Memphis, that it requires a different mindset, if you will. And just to your point, everybody has a buy-in, which is what what is it, the CMAR is one thing, but the integrative development piece is really different. And then the new term that you mentioned is even more so. So I think that is what is being implemented at this point in the care of just the whole going in and salvaging what we can in the very beginning has been a very precise task.
You know, in this day and age, particularly post-COVID, the old ceiling is the new floor. In terms of overall construction costs and buildability. I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here a little bit about that, but as we look at this project, you've got some finite dollars that you're going to be operating with. And so how do we maximize those pieces? And you've established and built a rock star team that got it to the point where it is. You know, again, as we look at project development, how do we think about bringing more? And I really commend the entire think tank that brought this together, James, Anasa, and Big We, because as I look around the room and folks out there waiting, you've got a blend of different talents and skill sets that need to come around this table to really maximize this going forward. So, Anasa, what are your goals for this in terms of, you alluded to it a little bit, what are your goals for this in terms of overall project development? What's the big vision, that big audacious, hairy goal?
Yeah, for me, the big vision is historic Clayborn Temple being the anchor for Civil Rights Cultural District. We've done the mapping. There's a cluster in kind of the downtownish area and a cluster in Soulsville, which is why we have ownership of both Clayborn Temple and Aretha Franklin's birth home, and thinking about how we can use those anchors and others to be able to be anchors for, again, for affordable housing, for brick and mortar retail. We have these pillars around environmental sustainability, public health and safety, storytelling and placemaking, and community ownership and governance, because we are really thinking about, I mean, I say this a lot, so forgive me if I said it already today, but really, when my first 6 months here, because I was writing a historic story, like a story that actually happened, I studied a lot. And so really everything that we are doing is about this building not being a static homage to the past. It's about how do we revive the work of the sanitation workers and the intention that King had the last year of his life to say like that. The thing that King saw in Memphis that brought him here, thinking that the future of his movement and the future of America was in Memphis, all of those elements are still here, right? And I think that we can, based on those pillars, revive those things, and actually think about the future culture of our city and the future culture of our nation, not just the arts part of it, but the actual way of being and how we interact with the economy, who we make space for to interact with the economy, right? And I think that South Memphis is a perfect place to do that. It's a place where all these things happen. And if you look at the trajectory of the neighborhood where the first Black millionaire in America lived and where his house is now, what it looks like now, that doesn't happen by accident. So it can't come back by accident. We have to be intentional in terms of how we build, where we build, who we give space to own, how we fund. Like we have another conversation about integrated capital investment, right? Which we don't have time to go into now, but we have been thinking about this for almost 9 years. So this is not just a construction project for us. It's not just a historic project. It's not just that. It's really about Clayborn being the playbook for the revitalization of the entire city and the way that we in this region develop, right? How we do gentrification mitigation, how we do a mix of old and new, how we think about participation, how we think about, even if we think about the idea of a cultural district and the idea that we have these 30 sites that could be a part of the district. Even when we think about the district management, I don't wanna have just a central agency that runs everything. I wanna build a co-op that is run and owned by each one of those spaces, because I don't need to be,
Yeah.
I don't need to own anything, everything. I do need to own some. I don't need to own, I don't need to own everything. I don't need to govern over everything. I
Yeah.
want for us to learn how to live together in
Yeah.
a meaningful way.
Yeah.
And I want us to learn that we don't have to leave people behind. And for me, Memphis is a place to do that. This is a place of innovation for as long as, from since the beginning, right?
Yes.
And not just art and culture, but from medical innovation to technology
Yes.
to logistics. Like, this is the place where things get born.
Yes.
And I think that if America needs a new way of being in terms of development in neighborhoods, then why wouldn't it be born here, and why wouldn't it be informed by King and the sanitation workers?
I love it. And since, you know, since, I know we're coming up on time, we've got 5 minutes in our little piece here, but, you know, I'd be remiss if I didn't at least say this, because, and again, I'm not presuming anything other than you all have done an excellent job here to this point. I'm just really gonna add a little pinch of flavor to this a little bit.
Yes.
You know, one of the things that, I'm not an architect, I'm not an urban planner, but I'm architectural and urban planning adjacent.
Yeah.
That's my role in functioning firm. I'm around a lot of brilliant folks, but I also recognize that in order to have these big visions, these big dreams, these beautiful pictures that these folks can draw up, it's gotta be fun.
Yeah.
And so, you know, otherwise, it's a pretty picture sitting out, there's great idea and great concept. And so as we look at these things, you know, I'm the chairman of the board for LISC, which is the Local Initiative Support Corporation in Indianapolis. Over the last 10 years, we've deployed $250 million to community development. There's organizations like that, CDFIs and others around the country that have local presence that we need to really bring under this tent as well, to bring some things in the capital stack and leveraging all types of things to really bring this vision to light. And it aligns with a lot of the mission and visions of those organizations. And so vision, have there been conversations with organizations like that?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
So one of the first lesson that I learned in Memphis was that it doesn't matter how good your ideas are, if you don't control the capital, it doesn't matter. And so I have spent, it's funny because I don't present as somebody who is like thinking about the money. I present as a fairy, unicorn blood, whatever. And like, I love that about myself, but in the background, I'm meeting with the CDFIs, I'm meeting with the funders, I'm learning about finance in a different way, because I do believe that the creatives in this town are the future of its salvation, but I do know that the creatives in this town don't understand finance and business, right? And so we are not only fortifying our own team, and like, we are in the process of building a white label fund so that we can raise, because you know, folks keep saying like, well, yeah, I know you're raising philanthropy, but do you want investment money? And yes, I do, but we don't have the infrastructure to take it. So we're working on that infrastructure. We'll have it done in 6 months. We have a philanthropic structure where we have granted $1 million to folks for their own projects, because we want to be able to, all the votes have to rise. It can't just be us. We're also like talking to the nonprofit finance fund about investing in local CDFI infrastructure.
Okay.
We're thinking about those things, but that is where we need the support. It's like, how do we think bigger? Because you know, imagination is my thing, and I can come up with a great concept, but I need help in terms of reimagining the finance and how we do that, and how I make sure like Missy Lane, right? And as she's stewarding and telling her stories, how do I make sure that she's fortified economically? Because if Missy Lane is not fortified, then I'm not fortified, right? How do we make sure that R.S. Lewis is getting, right? All the elements have to work, but they have to work. They can't just be a good idea, and they can't just make people feel good. They can't just teach a lesson. Like, we have to be in business,
100%.
right? And I am working really hard to make sure that people understand that we are here to build sustainable, scalable businesses, not just teach sustainable, scalable stories.
Love it. And on that point, that's right up on time. Because as you did not know this, you know, this has been an honor. Encouraged about conversations around the table, and we look forward to continuing those conversations.
Thank you all so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. This was a great panel for project development. Right now, we're in a bit of a transition period for our 4 panels. At the top of the hour, I did not mention who brought these conversations together. These conversations and the group of people that we have in the room for all four panels was curated by Bass River Advisors Global Institute, or BRGI, and they're an affiliate brand of Bass River Advisors. Bass River Advisors is a strategic advice and management consultancy with more than 10 years of strategic project development experience in Memphis and the Mid-South region. BRGI is a leader in framing innovative conversations like these that you've been a part of today that provoke thought leadership, drive measurable impact, and achieve creative outcomes. I am also signing off as your moderator for these first two panels and handing things over to Abraham Williamson, who will be with you for panels 3 and 4 on funding and placemaking. Abraham?
Thank you, and before you go, we want to make sure we give our proper due for you taking us through this morning, Shannon, and we thank you very much for keeping us on track and on time and for enriching the first part of this discussion. Now we're moving to the second half. And as we get started and welcome our guests into the room who are here virtually and physically here with us, just a transition question, why are we here? And listening to the first part, it's pretty clear that we're here to merge both the executive leadership that ANASA has showed from the very beginning with the experts that the Stokes family and Bass River Global Institute has provided for us today. And you kind of alluded to this in the last panel discussion, how much funding has been core to the success of this. So before we get into our panelists, I want to just ask you for your observations and ask you a direct question about what the experience has been like in raising capital. And we know you've had success getting you already halfway to your goal, but what are you running into? What are the messages that would be helpful for us to discuss today that may be roadblocks, or why would somebody possibly say no? Is it a pipeline question? Just walk us through what you're seeing in this capital campaign.
Yeah. So, I have two observations.
Okay.
The first observation, which to me is the most important, is that it was very clear early on who had our back.
Okay.
Like our best funding relationships, we didn't even have to call them. We had raised $1 million in the first 24 hours of the fire without having to lift a finger. Because folks who have your relationship, they've seen what's happening, they know you need, and they know they have, and so they call and say, can I offer?
Oh, wow.
And we say yes. And so it's been really, part of our healing has been that we have not been abandoned by the people who have been with us the whole time. Like the funders who showed up for us at phase 2, our phase 2, where we raised and spent probably $8 million on the building right before the fire. And so the folks who helped us there helped us again. There were folks who offered cash. There's folks who were like, we loaned you this money, we're gonna forgive that loan. You don't need the burden of that debt right now, so we're gonna forgive that loan, and by the way, here goes some more cash, right? And that's how we've been able to get to the point where we fully funded our pre-development work. So we're not worried about that anymore. I can just hand it over to the team and go get some more money. That is the positive side. The not so positive side is that there have been folks who we've approached who are well within their ability to be able to give them support and give lead gifts. And their question is like, well, how do I know if I give you this, you're going to be able to get the rest, right? And that's very frustrating because like at some point, someone's going to have to show leadership and someone's going to have to be courageous. I can't be the only one that's courageous on the ground, right? I know that folks, because of the funding climate right now, like folks have decided to be more conservative and not lean in and just go for it. And so it's hard for folks who are fundraising right now because it is not as prevalent to find funders that are willing to take a leap and be the first one.
Yeah, that is something that I see in my space as well, in the venture capital space. We call that financing risk, where the idea is, well, if you need 100 million or whatever that number is, and I give you 10, I can lose the 10 because you need the 100 to complete the project. So how have you kind of dealt with that, or do you just move to people who get it because there are people who have set that precedent, or do you provide more of a stage or more of a phased approach where people can see the risk is not as large as you think?
Well, I think there's two things that we're doing to do that. One is we're building this capital campaign committee. So like every dollar of that first 8 million and every dollar of the money we've raised in the past 5 months to be able to move forward with pre-development, I literally raised single-handedly. Right? It's my relationships, me getting on the plane, me doing all the work. We have never had a development director. We have one development staff person who does the admin. But in terms of like the relationship and the asking and the planning and the strategy, it's literally been on my back for the past 8 years, 100%. I believe in myself very deeply that I can raise the rest of this money, but it sure would be helpful to have some of that help. And so we have, part of what we've done is to raise money in the past 5 months to be able to build a proper development team. So we're actively looking for a development director. We're actively looking for a corporate person. We're actively recruiting people from the capital campaign committee so that if I can raise 10 million, well, so can you, and so can you, and so can you. And then it becomes a different conversation. The other thing is when we have those folks with relationships and track record on the team, then it de-risks the investment, right? If it's me asking about myself, it's one thing. If me asking with these other 10 folks who have portfolios of their own and reputations of their own, then it's easier for me to convince someone that I can raise the rest of this money, right? And so that's been really important for us. Is like the first person we asked to be on the capital campaign committee first of all, we've never asked anybody who said no. Everyone who asked us said yes. But the first person we asked is Brent Legs, who is the head of the African American Heritage Action Fund and the vice president at the National Trust for Historical Preservation, right? And so like when you have Brent Legs standing up for you and saying like, I am here to make sure that this happens. When we had our event on May 28th and we had the mayor and the congressman and the head of the city council and the and MLK3 and Brent Legs standing up on camera saying we are going to do everything we can to make sure that this building is open. Like that helps. Relationships help. People who respect our work and believe in what we're doing, it helps a lot. It helps a lot.
I bet, and it sounds like you have had early success largely doing things on your own as a great executive would, and part of this process and bringing and convening these folks together is to get you some help. So let's bring it to the panel, and I want to start, first of all, Harold is gonna help co-facilitate this so we can have the most enriching discussion possible, but I want to save your self-introduction after we get these folks going. I saw you taking a lot of notes, so I know you have some good things to say.
One more thing.
Sure.
One other thing that has really helped us is that we are not thinking about Clayborn in our ecosystem as just a nonprofit project. So the fact that we've been able to open up the funding and say, yes, we want this much money in philanthropy, but we also want this much money in impact investing because we want to invest in other real estate, we want to invest in entrepreneurs, that helps a lot too, because in terms of de-risking, we're able to make the argument, the business case for culture, the business case for cultural economy, and we're able to say like this is actually a sustainable investment for the future, not just like a one-time investment in a static museum that will do whatever it does, hopefully maybe cross your fingers. So that also has helped us a lot, is that it's opened up the amount of people and the kind of people that we get to talk to now. When I go to LA, I'm not just talking to philanthropists, I'm also talking to investors. And that has helped a lot too, to give people confidence in the work that we do.
That they have different expectations.
Yeah, and because we already were able to raise a loan fund for our entrepreneurs. So I was saying earlier, like every entrepreneur that goes through our program, they get access to loan capital that they don't have to pay back unless their business is in the black, right? And so like me being able to go to an investor and say, we're already investing in folks, we're already doing this, or helps them feel confident in the fact that we can do that with their money too, on a larger scale.
And you get to tell what I hear often when you're going to different meetings here in Memphis, is that the number one export is culture. And so that's at the heart.
The number one export is culture since the beginning of the city. Yeah, since the beginning.
So let's move to Rodney Harrington. If you have joined us, please give us your quick introduction. We know you know how to do that coming from HBS and all that. So please give us your introduction, and then also help bridge the gap for us. Anasa has mentioned that she's been going to a variety of funding sources. Please help us to kind of understand what's happening on the other side with the foundations, with the impact investment funds, et cetera, and how we can bridge that gap to continue to get financing and close the capital campaign. Rodney.
Sure. Good morning. Pleasure to be able to speak briefly. I'm in Atlanta today on business. Apologies, I couldn't be there in person. Many of you may know I'm a native Memphian. Love Memphis. I still have a 901 cell number, and I've been away since after high school. But and many of you may not know, I purchased the Hooks Brothers photography collection to bring it back to Memphis. It needed to be in Memphis. It was, a lot of history there when, the original home of the Hooks Brothers family studio burned down. A lot of history around burnings and our history, but it ended up moving around quite a bit. A person from California who was a collector bought it, moved it to Mississippi. Took a while to find it, but went there, met with the widow of the gentleman who passed, who had that collection and many more. And, God led to a good decision. She figured it'd be in better hands coming back to Memphis. So talking about fundraising projects like this, given that, federal funding for museums, colleges, we know what's going on there. It's important to be very creative. You may look back and remember when Ebony had its issues, and there was a consortium of foundations that came together to buy Ebony, and then they donated it to the Smithsonian. So what we're seeing now is more consortiums, more public-private partnerships, bringing high net worth individuals who are art collectors, enthusiasts around art, culture, and raising dollars that way. For instance, with the Hooks Brothers collection, that's in a partnership with the Civil Rights Museum and the Brooks Museum. They went and obtained a grant from the Mellon Foundation, and that's what's restoring the collection, digitizing it, and getting it ready for cultural, educational, and travel exhibits. It just traveled to part of Asia last month, just exposing our great history around the globe. I'm reminded by Frederick Douglass. As you know, he wrote many essays around the power of photography and how it can shape the perception of our race. So what you guys are doing for the Clayborn Temple is amazing. I want to be a part of it. I know I've been missing meetings and collaboration, but I assure you my commitment is there. So I look forward to talking about funding and ways to bridge the public sector with private funds, foundations, endowments, family offices, and high net worth individuals.
If we could double click on that briefly, Rodney, and talk about the public-private partnerships and the connection and what exactly those investors are looking for and why they would be interested in this project, given they have a lot of different, maybe competing projects they're looking at. In the projects that have been successfully funded, what is the thing that brings them to the top of the stack? And if you did want to comment on what Anasa mentioned earlier about the financing risk and people saying, I need to see the rest of it before I give, if you could talk about solutions for that as well.
Well, you have to find, and excuse the way I phrase it, a white knight. Every project that I work on, whether it's a private deal, public deal, you always have what's called an anchor or a sponsor. When I launched my firm, it was Regis Morgan Keegan that launched us with 70 million. There's no way in hell I could have grown an investment firm without an initial sponsor. So the critical part is finding someone with deep pockets, i.e. the Brooks found the Hyde family. I mean, it's Pitt and Barbara that anchored the new museum coming downtown. I'm on the board. I know that is factual and there's nothing wrong with that. We needed that. So we have to find anchor sponsors for this project. And that can happen. Again, I was funded by Regions and a very high net worth individual, Paul Tudor Jones. So that we have to court these people who are from Memphis, who may have left, but they still have a love for Memphis. And they're out there. A lot of wealthy people in Memphis that may not even know about this project. So one role I will play is bridging the high net worth people to this world that we are participating in, trying to preserve our culture, our history for Memphis to tell our story.
Fantastic. And Greg, if you could come off mute as well and maybe talk about the role that the National Park Service plays in oversight, because yes, we have the capital campaign and raising from private and foundations, et cetera. But you also bring into the room the insight from the federal government's perspective and the National Park Service specifically, and maybe some things that people don't quite know about how supportive the National Park Service really is in these situations. But provide your introduction, and if you could bring that perspective into the room.
Perfect. Thank you. So yes, I'm Greg Morrison. I'm a historic preservation consultant and architectural designer with LRK, based out of Memphis. I am not a native Memphian, but I think I'm unintentionally sort of nomadic. And if people ask me where home is, the answer is Memphis. There's more I could get into on that, but that's not what we're here to talk about. Usually I describe myself as a historic preservationist hiding out as an architect, but the great thing about a project like Clayborn Temple is I get to just be the preservationist front and center. And to me, what you sort of alluded to in the introduction is a lot of my interest is in historic preservation as an economic driver, and really the understanding that the historic tax credit program is an economic incentive. So it inherently has preservation as a much more dynamic thing that inspires growth and development. And it's not about a stagnant museum sort of situation. It's really about bringing preservation into people's daily lives and activities and spending and all of those things. And that is the bulk of how the world engages with historic preservation. It's not in museum visitation, all that's visiting active living spaces, and the program supports that. And I think for this particular project, thinking about how the National Park Service engages with it, a lot of my thought about that really started from the day of the fire. Obviously, prior to that, we had a more conventional a rehabilitation project that was the norm that people are used to dealing with in that realm. But as the fire was developing, the questions started to come like, well, at what point do you still have a building after a catastrophic fire like this? How do we define what we're trying to do? Because it's not a program that's intended for reconstruction. It's a rehabilitation program that takes buildings that are not actively in use and intends to infuse them with funds to make them contributing parts of the built environment again. So the first steps there were just to reach out to the State Historic Preservation Office and the National Park Service and say, like, guys, what are we facing here? Like, have you dealt with this before, where you had a project that was deeply underway that has to take these steps back? Like, where do we draw the line between what's a building, how you maintain your National Register status, and all of those things? And the response was really encouraging. Some of it they didn't have answers to, because it's not every day that you experience something like this, but everyone immediately was willing to join the conversation, because I think, as we'll see in these other, and we've already heard it in some of the other discussions, Clayborn is a project that people connect with quickly and develop that sort of sense of partnership and ownership. So our representatives at the State Historic Preservation Office and the National Park Service feel that sense of commitment and loss in the same way that we all did. So they were very interested in having a conversation. And I think probably the best thing that came out of that was a couple of examples of case studies that have faced similar issues. One is a church building in Phoenix that's now a wedding venue that had a catastrophic fire, and they actually didn't fully rebuild. And it's an open air courtyard with an annex attached to it that serves the courtyard space. And then probably the most relevant example is Pilgrim Baptist Church in Chicago. They've had a long path toward reconstruction, but they're working toward it. And both of those are, at least the one in Phoenix is a completed historic tax credit project, and Pilgrim Baptist is believed to be on a path toward achieving historic tax credits. So we won't be total pioneers on that front, but it will be an interesting path forward, and one that they will be very helpful in us putting our best foot forward to get there.
Thank you for sharing that, Greg. And I do want to turn it over to Harold, who's going to bring the perspective as an operator, somebody who's focusing on the business models and the revenue generation, and perhaps the things that Rodney's funders and Greg's folks also are interested in. So if you could introduce yourself and then also bring that perspective into the room.
All right, so thanks, Abraham, and good morning, everyone. Rather nice to meet you, Nasa. Nice to meet everyone in the room. I think this conversation is very interesting, it's very important, very vital. So I'm a senior consultant with Fratellis. We support local governments throughout the country, east, west, north, south, even in Canada. We support a lot of things that are invisible that can't see, like electricity, wastewater, stormwater, water lines, things like that, as well as solid waste. I think this is an important topic because for me, I started my local government career in city of Memphis with a solid waste division. So it was kind of directly tied to, I was a man, I got a scholarship when I was in grad school, I had a man scholarship. Wow. So yeah, that direct connection line to me, and I think it's amazing hearing everything you're doing, and it's very inspiring. So with the funding topic, when we talk about funding, really the most important thing, even for our projects, is people. Like the reason that we have civil infrastructure in the building documents is people. We want people to have clean water. We want to have a place to have wastewater treatment. We want to make sure our environment is as safe as it can be. I think the same with that topic on the nonprofit side, especially for Clayborn Temple, historic Clayborn Temple, is people. Like the story, that's what makes this whole of our history, is like it's the people. So the funding, of course, is important, but the reason that we want to have placemaking, the reason that we want to pass the knowledge and history to the youth is because we want to share the knowledge and history of what people did, what we did for each other. So on the funding side, of course, we can talk about source of funds and use of funds. So for all projects, we all have that. So we kind of segmented. Of course, the more detail you get, the more complex you get. But high level, you have a source of funds where you need to get your funding. For us, it could be federal, state, local. Of course, for the nonprofit, as Rodney and Greg are stating, is several capital ways you can leverage like different sources of capital funds you may need. But on the basis of it, you have source of funds and use of funds. And then as far as this project, you have two segments. You have the capital side, your physical assets that you need to rebuild, and then after that, you have programs. The programming is very vital and important for the long-term sustainability of what you're doing on the physical asset side. So it's kind of all integrated and all incorporated. But I think that the thing that you mentioned, like where you're starting, how you have to pull the funding and how you already have, so it's like, it's a whole entire team really that you need. And on the grant side, on the private side, on the government side. And I think the question that we could have is like on the use of funds side, what is the total funding needed? I think you said eight or 9 million occurred, as part of the product rebuild until the fire occurred on April 28th of this year. So I think 25 million or so was allocated for the revitalization. But now that the total dollar amount has changed, kind of like where are we today? Like what is the total dollar amount that proposed is needed? I think we said 75 million, like approximately in February of next year. But if that's the total source of funds that are needed, like what piece of that pie, is currently already allocated, and then what's currently still remaining? I think that would be the question we have on the source of funds side.
So we haven't launched a capital campaign yet. So we won't launch the campaign until April, and we're giving ourselves 3 years to raise the 75.
That's good. And thank you for kind of breaking that down for us to see the full landscape. There is a lot that's happening that you are managing. So I appreciate you providing that breakdown. I also want to just open it up to the full panel. Maybe we can go Rodney and then Greg on this question and topic. What have you heard today that you see there's an opportunity that could be elevated? We know Anasa is managing a lot. There are a lot of moving pieces, a lot of supports you've been carrying a lot. Where do you see an opportunity to build on what's been done right now from a funding side, or something that you think is an opportunity that we maybe are missing right now? We'll start with Rodney and then move to Greg.
Yeah, again, I haven't been as close to the project, so if I've missed if I'm misinformed, correct me. But just looking at projects that I'm working on in Chicago, I'm helping out the museum here in Atlanta. You have to put kind of a reimagination plan together, a whole visionary blueprint. And I believe the project needs to be phased. You can't do it all at once. So the most critical aspect of the budget that was mentioned by Harold, all the way to the end, stage it. And people want to know the value proposition. Why should I write $1 million check? Clearly to preserve the temple, the history, But what's the value proposition? I remember when the Civil Rights Museum was built, they had some naming rights. You still go there now, you see the original plates of people who wrote big checks to build that museum. We just have to be creative financing, and it can be done. Some people have egos. When they write a check, they do want to be known. Some people don't care. They just want to do common good for the good of man and mankind. But just being creative, putting together this visionary rendering and then staging it and then going according to schedule, raising that capital and delivering. People love it when you're meeting or exceeding expectations. So you don't want to do lofty on the front end and miss it, because then it's gonna take your whole project off base. I would start with things you know you can achieve and build the confidence up and trust from additional investors along the way. And we have to start in Memphis. We don't get critical people in Memphis to write that check. It's going to be hard to get the Mellon Foundations, the MacArthur Foundations, the Ford Foundation. They will write the check if they see a strong movement in Memphis.
Rodney, if we could double click on that a little bit as well, because the first half we heard there is an exceptional reimagining plan in place, and interactive. It's not just rebuilding what was there, it's kind of bringing us into the 21st century. So assuming that that is in place, do you have examples or things that you've seen where somebody maybe was on the fence, or they thought it was too lofty and you were able to serve as a liaison to get them over the hump? Could you just talk about, let's assume that those things are in place and there's resistance. Do we just move on to a different group, or is there an opportunity to maybe shift the positioning to get a yes?
Yeah, I've only speaking from what's going on right now with the campaign for the Brooks Museum. There are strong committees. There's like 20 of us, and each of us are charged with going out and getting 20 people, and it's a domino effect. I mean, we are charged with raising money. It takes a village. So that's the best example I can give you. We're trying to close our $20 million gap to complete the museum. And then there's matching donations. There's some foundations that said if you raise 10, we'll match 10. So it's a whole consortium and a team of people that are all playing a role to get to that end goal. That is what's happening for that beautiful museum that's going to be erected in the next 2 years downtown Memphis. We can do the same thing here.
And that's a great point. And Greg, maybe if we could build on this topic for you with the National Park Service, are there ways in which you can sort of leverage the National Park Service support and commitment to the place and to the programming to bring the people in to really see the vision and transform that into leverage for the capital campaign itself when it gets kicked off?
I think absolutely, especially with programming like Anasa mentioned, like the Robert R. Church incubator, basically stressing the fact that it is meant to like preserve something in that way that is intended to be an economic driver. That's something that like the historic tax credit program, I think, has a safe position in the world of funding around historic preservation because of its identity as an economic driver. Even when like in changing political climates and all that, things that back private development, honestly, are going to be the ones that are going to be safest because it's sort of universally appealing. It's not grants directed toward a specific use or organization or whatever. It's a pretty sound program that we've seen. It might change a little bit in shifting climates, but it's going to be safe. So I think that tied into that identity that's associated with it gives it an inherent basis that like people who would be likely to contribute private dollars are going to see that as well, that it's sort of wrapped up in that desire for growth and development and not just like something that's going to rely on an endowment or a revolving fund or something like that, that is meant to actually generate income, gives it a lot of power. And then I also think like acquiring the AMAC building will help strengthen the approach to historic tax credits, because then you're sort of balancing out some parts that are missing of a building. Then you have one whole complete, very easy to understand rehabilitation project that is now part of a campus. And that sort of will help, I think, build confidence from the preservation side as well.
Thank you for that perspective, and to all the panelists, and especially for those who are on Zoom here. How can we keep in touch with you? How can we keep the conversation going? How can we want you on the team? How can we make sure that happens? What's the easiest way to get connected and the opportunity that you think you can provide to the total project? Oh.
I mean, yeah, I was going to say. Yeah, get after NASA.
Yeah, well, we were just saying how you can stay connected. What's the best way for you to help out with this, Rodney? And then we can take it into the next.
Okay. Absolutely. I'm in Memphis every month. I'm able, willing to meet with the team and get started. I can help. There's a growing group of athletes too that are investing in art, culture. We have a great local art collector, Elliot Perry, who's a good friend, and he knows those outside of Memphis. Chris Webber's a big collector, Grant Hill, Camilla Anthony, Serena Williams. So we can start tying into these groups and connecting with people outside of Memphis that may have an interest in supporting this historic endeavor. So a lot of ways to do it. I welcome the dialogue and I welcome being involved.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Rodney.
Thank you. And as we transition as well, we will hear some initial reactions. I think this was a very enriching discussion, and we will transition to the fourth panel to bring us on home. So while that transition is happening, maybe you can react to what you heard. Thank you to Rodney and Greg and Carol for being here and helping us with this funding discussion. And Anasa, I know you had a lot on your shoulders today. A lot of what they have said has also, been something that has been on your mind or you talked about earlier today. But I want to challenge to see if there's anything that we heard in this discussion that you take away and say, okay, this is something that is an opportunity for us or an inspiration for us. If you could just react to what we just heard.
Yeah, I think the conversation that Greg brought about the tax credits is really important because when we first, one of the big questions they asked the fire was, are we still eligible for historic tax credits? Because that's upwards of net $8 million out of our budget. Right, so like that's a big chunk of the money from the National Park Service process that we have been like, I don't know if you've ever been through a National Park Service historic tax credit process, but it is brutal. And like the amount of time and energy and money that we spent to be able to be in compliance to apply for those tax credits would have been devastating if we were not able to go through with that. But the National Park Service has been so generous and like Greg said, we've been working with these folks for 8 years at this point. So for them, it's also like a heartbreak and a like, oh no, we're gonna get this done, right? And so the commitment that the National Park Service has shown to our project and the friendship that they've offered, and even they came down here and we had our May 28th event, they were here in the room, like we got your back, and that was huge. And so the fact that we know we can count on them to help bring that $8 million home is like very, very wonderful. And having Rodney here means so much to me because part of our challenge is that I'm not from here, and I work really hard, and I travel a lot because I'm fundraising and I'm doing speaking and stuff, and so I don't have the depth of network that somebody like Rodney can bring to our work. Like having him say like I'm willing to roll my sleeves up and help figure this out that's the thing that's going to take us to the next level, is being able to have the trust and the support of people like him, so that people who are Memphians who have been here and have relationships with folks like him can look at us and say, oh, well, Rodney said is she cool, then she must be cool, let's go at least talk to her. I have that is probably my Achilles heel, is that I work too hard and I don't focus on like making sure that everybody knows what I'm doing, because I'm just focused on doing the thing, right? And I'm working to get better to do that, but having folks like Rodney on our side will be really helpful. So really grateful for his pledge of support.
Likewise, and that is the people element that Harold was talking about earlier, and it does take a team. So let's dive into the next and last conversation that we'll have on placemaking. So we'll want to invite Richard and Natalia.
Come on down. How are you? You're pro. Yeah, you're doing a great job. You should be. You should be. You should be the host of something.
So now we have Richard and Talia, who have had the benefit of listening to all three of the panels. So in addition to your self-introductions, if you could maybe, reset the room and give your initial thoughts before we jump into the ever so important topic of placemaking.
Well, nothing to completely something different, because placemaking is really about creating that texture, that appeal of a destination, that stickiness that drives traffic. At the end of the day, I'm in the business of doing that. I'm in the business of creating fantasy, I suppose, at the beginning, as you painted, with the extensive vision. It doesn't exist, but it's in your head. You get it out on paper, you go to funders, you make it real. I'm with SWA, they're landscape architects, planning urban designers, based in California, but I work in the Houston office. And it's also very interesting, as an outsider, I bring a double outsider's perspective, not just on looking at Memphis from Houstonians' eyes, because we have very similar challenges and struggles in positioning the city. But also, I'm not looking at the building as be all. I'm looking at connective tissue among the building and the site design and landscape and nature and human experience, that brings it all together. So in those two capacities, I suppose I can bring some value. And maybe with that, Richard, you can introduce yourself, because you bring something totally different.
No, I'm just growing a lot. You tend to do those. That's I a lot of listening. But my name's Richard Vining. I'm the executive director and founder of the Edge Motor Museum.
I love your museum, by the way.
Thank you.
I love it.
Thank you. And we're focused on preservation through historically based presentation. That's our mission. And initially that was just with the cars. We do running, driving, original examples, just like they were with you. And most of them are local cars. But so much of that process actually began in this room in 2017, when something I kind of underrated at the time, but we needed to preserve the building. It wasn't just going to be a build out. We applied for and received from the Downtown Memphis Commission an EIG. I had no idea what that was at the time. I learned it very, it's got a lot of money behind it. An exterior improvement grant.
Okay.
And we were able to preserve the beautiful facade of our facility, which originally was an automobile manufacturing plant. And so we kind of brought back the car to that building. And I'd like to say that the grant empowered us to, no, the grant didn't empower, the grant made that happen. That's right. We wouldn't have done it otherwise. And so it is now one of the more striking things when you come to the museum is the facility itself, not just the cars that are in it. So I've been doing that for since we opened our doors in 2019. Enjoy that job and have been very proud of the fact that the local support for a car museum is here in Memphis.
Fantastic. And so I want to open up and right to the heart of this matter, which is the placemaking. You mentioned this, Natalia, right out of the gate, that it's about like interacting. You used that phrase earlier, interacting with the built environment. It seems like Anasa has a vision for this kind of newer, more interactive, not just simply a place where you go and look, but also can kind of feel. Could you talk about how you're able to do that? What are some of the best practices that you see? Because both of you are coming from very tactile sort of environments and telling those stories. So could you talk about some of the things that you've seen based on what you've heard so far that you'd like to see or that you're encouraged by what's been said so far?
Absolutely. There are certain things that just work. The repositioning the city to be a competitive center, not just for jobs, but for quality of life. And that's what Houston is in the running for, and Memphis is in the running for. We want people to come live and work there. But as they come and tour the workplace, and they're asking us, what are the parks like? What is my outside of the office experience going to be like? What is the food like? What is the community like? So at the end of the day, quality of life, combination of cultural offerings and nature of the place. So when we look at this destination creation and building, we can't overlook the fact that holistic experience that ties sites together is what at the end of the day, how people remember the place. So it's pretty cool to drive to a car museum, that kind of makes sense. But when we're talking about the Civil Rights Trail and creating walkable districts and how the march itself, as a ritual, as a procession, starts structuring the design and the sequence of these destinations as if beads in a necklace.
Yes.
And I apologize, I failed to mention we just completed work with Tucker Architects and Civil Rights Museum. So we were designing the garden and the Founders Park. So we look at the whole thing through the lens of the garden. So yeah, this is kind of it's sort of the reverse, like the bigger ground relationship, right? So we start with the garden and the garden setting and thinking of the temple as a life filled place. It's always been a life filled place, but different kind of life over years. This morning, that was my first experience to see the temple on the fire. And immediately, of course, my eye goes to green because that's the first thing I see. So I saw a bank of American sycamore saplings coming through the rubble.
I saw that too.
And taking and
It was so
big.
exciting. I
And
know.
big. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like did the birds just, drop some seeds? And so it's just a demonstration of entropy, right?
Yeah.
So how nature left its own
That's
devices,
right.
nature will take over. It will be a beautiful ruin. That's not what we're after.
That's right.
But the garden is there,
Mhm.
whether you tend to it or not,
That's right.
it will come in. And so for us to anticipate the garden, to look at the garden, to structure the experience where garden and architecture are in constant dialogue and it's meaningful. So for example, in Civil Rights Museum, there is a reason why the Founders Park is so formal and clean and simple, because that space, the descending staircase that's focusing on the balcony where MLK was assassinated, it shouldn't distract from that.
That's right.
It's completely decluttered. Everything is clean surfaces. Everything is all about those lines, kind of pointing to that location. While on the terrace, the new legacy terrace, where the historic condition of landscape at the time was this unkempt meadow. And so when you see perennial garden there, that looks a little bit like, oh, well, it's not pretty. What's going on there? Well, there's a story behind there. It's almost like a historic capsule in and of itself. We were framing the condition of native perennials as they existed at the time of the historic events, to where they're framed, they're not scary and not attractive. You appreciate them through the frame. So that kind of relationship, when you provide a frame to the landscape and vice versa, the landscape gives you life and gives you respite and gives you comfort and gives you that kind of the quality of experience that a lot of times you also tend to not talk about obvious things such as climate and how people experience the journey to a particular destination in Houston as well as here. It's whether or not they have shade, whether or not they have cool immersive environment. So the trend that we've been working with in Houston in terms of providing this kind of experiences is what's called cool corridors. So cool corridors is this idea where the cool and cool come together, cool in terms of programming and destination and awesomeness and something to do and something to eat and something to learn, and cool in terms of comfort and being able to actually work there. And especially if you're talking about inviting diverse audiences, a lot of which Civil Rights Museum, elderly, youth groups, kids that are wild, they want to climb on everything. The older generation, they need accessibility to everywhere. So you start kind of thinking cool, not just shade. It's everything. It's environmental comfort, accessibility, all of those things. So the cool and cool is what we've been kind of playing with of late as really important combination for proper placemaking design.
I love that. And thank you for sharing that. And it reminds me that when we first started today, you mentioned, and this ties into what you said in your introduction, Richard, as well, that we still do have artifacts and remnants
Yes.
from before, and including the cornerstone, which is very
Yes.
powerful for a building for a variety of reasons. And that's something that is probably touching on what you do at the Edgemoda Museum as well, Richard. So could you talk about the importance and how you use those local artifacts and remnants in order to make the place really tell that story, where storytelling and placemaking come together?
Yeah, and that's where I think we set ourselves apart from other car museums. They're all great, but because of our space, it's not huge. It's just not rows and columns of cars. We tell a curated story, and it's the story that sets us apart. We don't just say a ticket.
Yeah.
We have those things that go with you and tell a story. There's lots of interactive elements. If you go read reviews and things, no one ever mentions how awesome your dad is, right? But they will mention the tour guide thing, right? And that sets us apart there. Also, you know, to try and just be a standalone car museum at the top environment to do that, we've lost our connection with cars and things. Even though they are interesting to some, they're not as interesting to everybody. And so we position ourselves as a complementary exhibit to the other amazing things that Memphis is so good at. If you think about, you know, we're right down the street from Sun Studio. Of course, you have various, you know, stacks, sold at some civil rights museum, things that have been mentioned here today. These cars are from that era.
Yeah.
And so I'm assuming that if you have an interest in the Civil Rights Museum, you're probably gonna be interested in this era of culture as well. And if you just look at it as a car, maybe not, but when you hear the why the car is like it is, people are suddenly interested in the car that's in front of
You
them.
know what's so funny is the one artifact that I want to see most from the civil rights era is Cornelia Crenshaw's car. That's all I care about, honestly. Honestly.
And we were talking about that earlier out in the hallway. Yeah, it just, it's part of the story.
It is.
You know, it's just part of it, and to just, oh, it's just a used car. No, it's a little more than that.
So we got a two-part kind of question for you in that vein, Richard, as well, because you know my dad is a car aficionado, so he knowing all the things that was happening. But me, I was learning while I was there, right, at the museum, right? I think you have the roadster, but you really see the connection between car history and American history and Memphis history, like realizing, hey, we didn't always have seatbelts, or you know,
You never think about that.
you know, we didn't always have the cars that look the way that they do today. So could you talk about how that story of the actual representation that's being made in this museum to actually connecting it with everyday people, where when they walk in, they see themselves in the place?
And where I think this is my bent to it as a finance person. It's not true in other countries. It is particular to America because we tell the story of American speed. It's the history and evolution of the U.S. sports car. The sports car in America has always been, it's a discretionary income item. Always has been. And it is therefore a economic barometer. And in really good economic times, you get fantastic sports cars. In less than fantastic economic times, you get the 81, 383 Corvette. They're not great cars. And so you see an ebb and flow. Why? Sometimes it's regulatory, like you were saying, the seatbelts and all that. But innovation in that niche, the sports car, always seems to happen when economic times are strong. People remember that. They remember where they were, where they lived, the choices they had to make, whether it was rationing gas or moving into a bigger house. Those are two very different things. And the cars reflect that. And I don't think the viewer of the car is always aware of that, but it wakes up things in their mind and gives them an experience that goes beyond, oh, cubic inches and horsepower and performance stats.
It's very powerful. And just keeping in this vein of placemaking as well, one question that we wanted to ask you both is, you are really good about tracking where people are coming. You can put the pin on the map and all that. So how would you address sort of the question, if you build it, they will come, because as Anasa mentioned earlier, there are definitely things being built. How do you connect that with making sure that people, they do come, they find out about it, and how that place is able to kind of exponentially go out and draw more people in?
Increasingly, what we call it is called planning around personas. So you literally lay out a life in a day and who your target audience is, really, you know, and it can be pretty long list. But you really need to understand the difference between somebody flying, like myself from Houston by myself, on this kind of touristic adventure. I'm light on my feet, I can do whatever I want, and versus somebody with a stroller, with a suitcase, with a aging parent. So things like that automatically, it's also called empathetic design. You step into their shoes, you create an itinerary for yourself, for that person, for that family, for 3 days in Memphis, let's just say staycation, right? And so how they would get around, how they would transfer from point to point, how they would collect, all the offerings that Memphis has to offer in terms of culture, food, and all of the greatness. And then, so you run a few of those scenarios, and it's kind of some of it is harder to prove out in real life as you imagining it. So I've been working in the designing public spaces now for 15 years, and people never stop surprising me. How they completely refuse my vision, especially children, I would say. So like, this is not for climbing, but now it is. Okay. So absolutely humbling experiences of my life working with natural material and with people material. Nature, you do everything right, that tree dies, this one lives. I don't know what did I do? Just tell me. Kids or families or whomever, school groups that show up, right? Like, why? Guys, come on, there's a trash can kind of thing, right? Like, sorry, I'm like made a very deep prosaic things, but it's people, right? So it's all for the people at the end of the day. So having that kind of generosity of planning, and availability of different, not just those itineraries, but also choice. In a hot climate, do I have a choice to sit under the shade? Do I have an air-conditioned outpost? So in between civil rights, walking a few blocks, it doesn't seem like a lot. But in reality, if I don't know that along the way there is a cooling center for me, and it can be a restaurant or a coffee shop, and it's on my map, FYI, then it's going to be unexpectedly different. And so that's where and then from that, it goes from the scenario planning around personas, you start formalizing for various design systems like wayfinding. Wayfinding is powerful, not just in the physical sense, sometimes it's intuitive. Landmarks, old school city building it's its own wayfinding, it's doing its job. But these days we rely a lot on signage or the digital navigation. So a combination of all of those together is thinking of transition of experiences from daytime to nighttime. The environment, the urban theater that we're like, you brought up theater. I didn't realize you have theater in the background. Okay, so urban theater is really possible at night. When your lighting quality, and you can start thinking about Google projections on the pavement, uplighting facades. This building at night can be like the most spectacular projection surface that you can show historic scenes, historic photography. I mean, it can be a theater with an audience without a lot of infrastructure associated with it. So once you start breaking it down in systems, I mean, it's almost like a list we literally have to check out. Then softscape, hardscape, softscape, obviously trees, obviously ground covers, obviously the kind of conceptual illusions gardens create, because if it's a native garden versus a formal garden, it starts bringing cultural connotations like, oh, that's a little, not appropriate here, right? Then we're talking about public art. Public art has its own system. It requires its own study, and it's almost like your breadcrumbs along your trails. So when you're running out of steam, you need to put something there. So like, keep going. It's like, okay, I can see it. So that's kind of your strategic, almost like you're spacing things. I mean, there are rules of thumb for it, but you're spacing things along the trail that continuously feed you that activation and stimulation that eventually bring you to the thing. So and that goes back to your idea of connecting the 30 sites with loops. I mean, that's brilliant. I mean, everything it's in the works. I'm like, there's no lack of ideas of it. Like, this is all good to go. Yes, it's breaking it down and starting to
Yes. Just like that.
talking about, bring people in and build it, they will come.
Yeah, and this, I thought about this a lot because I think it's a risky announcement. I'm gonna go for it
Go
anyway.
for
Okay,
it.
all right. And in no way am I comparing the two situations, but there are parallels here. We were saying economic barometers with cars.
Yeah.
Bo was mentioning a recession in 2008
Yeah.
that prolonged, whatever, and that really impacted all things Corvette.
Yeah.
We just did the 10-year anniversary of it last year, but in 2014, a tragedy of sorts happened at the National Corvette Museum in Bowling Green, Kentucky. A giant 40-foot sinkhole opened up in the middle
Shut
of the
up.
museum. Go look at some security camera footage of this.
Whoa.
And it eats about a dozen historic Corvettes. You know, not going parallels here, but I'm
Wow.
not comparing the two, but there
No,
are
I
parallels
got you.
here. And it was awful.
Yeah.
It was awful.
Okay.
And it forced, the tough time for the museum.
Yeah.
The attendance is not great.
Yeah.
The exhibits had become kind of stale, other than just the cars themselves. And so they had to make some really hard decisions. And they reimagined themselves. You were mentioning earlier some of the immersive aspects of it. They now do that. And they actually embraced the sinkhole because there were two cars they couldn't get out. Everything else was fixed as best they could. And they put glass over it and they lit it up and they are actually highlighting the damage that was done. And that
Oh my God, I'm sorry.
saved the museum. That incident has saved that museum. And I would say in part has brought us the amazing Corvette we have today.
Yeah.
Those two are tied. In other words, the product produced is directly connected to the success of that. And so there's a lot of missional things that I hope you can see with this project here as well. And so while it was an awful thing, they actually embraced it to the point where they actually highlight it and made it part of their story. It's not just a relic or a shrine to the past.
Yeah.
No, it's now part of the story.
I really love that you brought that up.
Good.
Now,
Well,
because I like to go see what museums are doing to help feed the imagination. So I'm gonna add that to my list because I want to see that. But the reason why I'm happy that you brought it up is because, and I used to Jimmy can tell you this, there is a tree that used to grow inside Clayborn Temple. Like when it was abandoned for 20 years, a tree grew up through the entire, up into the second floor. And it's like my favorite thing. And I'm always like, we need to keep this tree. I don't care what you do, but when this building opens, I want that tree to be in this building. And when we were at the site yesterday, I was thinking the same thing about the fire. Like, I don't want to ignore the fact that this fire is now a part of this building's story and the history of the city. And I've been really thinking about how can we show in the redesign the damage and the destruction that happened, not only from the original abandonment of the building, right, for 20 years and all the water in the floors and all that, and the tree, my beautiful tree, but also like now, how do we honor, I don't wanna cover the fire up. I don't wanna pretend like it didn't happen. I want people to be able to come in the building and literally experience the fact that there was a fire in this building that was intentionally set for reasons that we don't know yet, and maybe we'll know one day, but right now we don't know. And I think that example really is very affirming for me, that not only should you honor the moments of pain, but they actually can become drivers for the future of the space and become very important for the economic argument for keeping the space open. So I'm really grateful for that. Yeah, I can't wait.
It's the first thing we want to do.
This has been very enriching discussion. I think very fitting. We covered a lot of ground today, so thank you both, Natalia and Richard, for sharing your experiences, the best practices and trends, and the unique situations that people have made, opportunities. Before we transition and kind of close this out, Anasa,
Yes.
reactions to this panel and also to the day itself and how it's kind of flowed and maybe ideas or, excitement. You've been working heads down. You have people supporting you, but working heads down. How does it feel to have, these caliber and this many people coming in here to speak to what you're doing, celebrate what you're doing, and also offer some insights in their own individual ways?
Yeah, it's an incredible gift for us and our team to be able to, one, because we especially, I think the first probably 2.5 months after the fire, I never took a day off, because I just was so like, we gotta get this done, we can't let this falter, and so it is nice to be able to lift my head up and know that we're not by ourselves. That's again, like, the number one lesson of this fire has been like, we actually have deep community, and to know that there are people who I've never met before who are thinking so deeply and having this brilliant, beautiful ideas that are gonna help inform and sustain us as we move forward is like, it's the biggest gift. I can't even express how important it is to us to know that we're not, oh, I'm gonna cry, oh my God. To know that we're not alone is, because arson can make you cry. It just is like a very devastating thing that we've been through, and just to know that we have so much support, even by folks who we never met before, is like the thing that makes me know this is gonna work. Yeah, and like to because I am what do you call that? Like a jack of all trades. Like I know a lot of things. I know a little bit about a lot. And those that the way that my brain works is what fuels my imagination. But when I get to double click on a thing, like I'm fascinated. Like I want to talk to you about these trees that have popped up in the rubble so adamantly, because I'm like, oh, did we make all of the trees just like that one and tell a story of the rubble through the like, and there's just so many.
It's rising through the action.
There's so many possibilities, right? And like everybody who's been here today has a whole tower of expertise that I could never even touch, right? And so just my little bit of to be able to then dive into so many, it's so fun. It's like the most fun I've had all week. I love it. So I'm so grateful.
That is the goal, and the conversation
Yeah.
isn't over. So
Yeah.
first of all, thank you
Oh,
for,
thank you.
entrusting Bass River Global Institute to be here and have this convening, and for you being so active throughout the whole time.
It's so family to us.
It is.
You know?
It is.
Family to us.
And so thank you, and know that this conversation will continue with the folks who are here and more who they bring to the table. We also want to thank the other folks who made this possible. So I'm going to run down the list of all of the folks who helped us out today. In addition to the panelists, we had Shannon Lake, who started us off moderating, obviously the expert panelists as well. Anasa and the Big We team, the Downtown Memphis Commission for allowing us to use this space and being so hospitable and keeping us on track. Black Box Media in South Memphis, Fitzco for the morning refreshments, the coffee.
We love South Memphis Company. Woo, we love that.
Fueled us for the day. And for protection fencing around America's landmark, historic Clayborn and Temple. So with that, we will close.
Can I stop one more thing? I just also want to thank all the people who showed up on the Zoom, who have been listening. I know, like, again, just knowing that people are interested and excited and want to participate and understand what's going on and be in the know is really important to me. So like, I don't know who's out there, but whoever it is, I'm grateful for you and I love you too. So thank you for being here.
We got people responding to that because we did have messages coming throughout the day. Shows of support. People saying that.
Yeah, I know. I saw Carolyn up there and I saw Michael up there. I saw a couple people come through, but y'all, thank y'all so much.
The conversation continues and the legacy lives on. With that, we will pass it back over to Jamie to close us out. Thank you again for our panelists and Anasa, and we'll switch it back to Jamie.
Great. Thank you so much, Abraham, and everyone on the ground. As always, Anasa, it's always a pleasure at Bass River Advisors and Bass River Global Institute to continue to be of service and in support of your beautiful mission and the wonderful work that you're doing in Memphis, Tennessee. You will always have beside you your 3, your 6, your 12, your every thing on that clock, right? So thank you so much to everyone in the room again that took some time out of their day to share and contribute to this dialogue and this conversation. Abraham, as always, thank you for an amazing job. You just do such a beautiful job of helping our vision come through and working strategically to amplify your talents as a moderator and lending your voice and perspectives. We look forward to hosting some more great conversations. We've been doing this since the pandemic, and just look forward to continuing to create spaces to connect innovators, different ideas, different people, different community members together. to support some of the amazing work that's happening in Memphis globally and throughout the world. We look forward to seeing you guys again soon. Have a wonderful, wonderful Friday. And thanks for tuning in.
Sounds like.
Oh, wait, thank you, James, that was great.
Can I just get one picture or two pictures